Have you ever stepped into a space and felt as if you were a ghost? Not in a metaphysical way, but in the most tangible sense. Standing there, fully present, and yet somehow completely unnoticed. That was today for Maya Tanaka, a Japanese-American woman in her late 40s whose name once lit up business magazines and Forbes lists. She wasn't just successful, she was historic. And yet, in this moment, she was invisible. Maya was the founder of the renowned Lotus Inn, a hospitality empire she had built from the ground up, brick by brick, hand by hand, a place where serenity met opulence, where even the scent of the lobby whispered luxury. Guests paid thousands for one night just to say they'd been here. And yet, as Maya stood at the check-in desk, no entourage, no tailored suit, just a well-worn leather satchel and a linen coat. She felt like a stray dog loitering outside a velvet party. This wasn't a spontaneous visit. Maya had received complaints, not isolated ones, but a growing pattern. Guests reporting coldness, hostility, even accusations of rudeness. She could have picked up the phone, summoned a regional manager, maybe even masked the issue with corporate jargon, but she had long learned, issues like these don't dissolve from a distance, they root themselves in silence. And so, she arrived in person, casual, quiet, anonymous, ready to see her empire through the eyes of someone assumed to be no one. What she encountered next was more than disappointing, it was familiar. Behind the front desk was a young white woman named Rina, lounging with the entitled ease of someone who had never felt overlooked in her life. Head bent, eyes fixed on her phone. She barely noticed the woman in front of her. Maya cleared her throat once. Nothing. She tapped gently on the marble. Still nothing. "Excuse me," Maya finally said. Rina sighed loudly, the kind of sigh that made Maya's skin prickle, the kind that said, "You don't belong here," lifting her eyes like it pained her to do so. Rina looked Maya over, and something flickered across her face. Not surprise, not confusion. Something else, recognition laced with dismissal. Maya had seen it before. Not "Welcome to the Lotus Inn." Not "How can I assist you?" Just a glance, as if sizing up a guest who didn't match the room. "I have a reservation," Maya said calmly. "Maya Tanaka." Rina tilted her head with a thin smirk. "Nope, nothing under that name," she said as she tapped aimlessly at the keyboard. Maya raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" "Pretty sure." Rina's tone was flat, already drifting back to her phone, and that's when Maya felt it. Not the system failing, but something much colder. That quiet, reflexive moment where someone decided who you were supposed to be. She'd lived through those moments. As a teenager being followed in boutiques, as a young executive having her ideas credited to someone else, as a founder whose name was once mistaken for the secretary's. It always looked like this, casual, quiet, and utterly calculated. "Could you check again, please?" Maya asked, keeping her tone even. Rina rolled her eyes but tapped a few more keys. Still nothing. "Sorry." She didn't sound sorry. She sounded bored. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her confirmation email. "I have it right here," she said, holding it up. Rina barely glanced at it. "Yeah, well, the system doesn't lie. Neither does my email." Another sigh. "Maybe you booked the wrong location. It happens." "Oh," Maya tilted her head. "Are you saying I'm lost?" Rina gave a little shrug. "Just saying it's easy to get these places confused." Maya clenched her jaw softly, a tension behind her otherwise composed exterior. "And what if I didn't? What if my reservation is right here?" Rina tapped her nails on the counter. "Then I guess the system glitched." Maya didn't need to guess. She knew how the system worked. She had written its protocols herself. And she also knew that systems don't glitch like this. People do. People who've decided, based on appearance, skin tone, accent, or last name, who belongs and who doesn't. And in this moment, Rina had decided that Maya Tanaka, dressed plainly, no makeup and Asian, did not. Maya inhaled slowly, not out of surprise but restraint. She had lived a lifetime balancing between dignity and detonation. Today she chose precision. Without a word, she slipped her hand into her bag and pulled out a second phone. Black, slim, encrypted. This was no ordinary device. It was her backdoor key into the Lotus Inn's internal system. Something only a handful of executives had access to. Her fingers moved calmly over the screen. She didn't need to rush. Her reservation lit up in seconds. Confirmed. She tapped deeper. Activity log. There it was. Line by line. Time-stamped. Deleted manually. By Rena S. Maya's mouth curved ever so slightly. She glanced up. Rena, right? The woman looked up lazily. Distracted. Yeah. Maya's tone was light, but her gaze had hardened. Tell me something. What happens when someone deletes a reservation? Rena blinked. It just removes it from the system. Nothing complicated. Maya nodded. And who can do that? She shrugged. Front desk staff only. Maya tilted the phone toward her, letting the screen glow between them. So help me understand why your name is next to the deletion of mine. Rena's breath caught audibly. Her posture stiffened. For the first time, she looked properly at Maya, not as a nuisance, not as an inconvenience, but as a threat she hadn't calculated for. I didn't mean to. Don't. Maya interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. Don't pretend this was an accident. Rena opened her mouth. Maya raised a hand. It was not just dismissal, it was command. You took one look at me, Maya continued softly, and decided I didn't belong, not because of what I said, not because of anything I did, but because of what you saw, or rather what you assumed. Rena swallowed hard, shrinking by the second. Do you know how many times that's happened to me? Maya's voice was calm but edged in steel. Do you know how many times someone looked at me and assumed I was the help, the assistant, the guest who couldn't possibly afford to be here? Rena said nothing. The lobby had fallen quiet. A couple near the lounge stopped pretending to read. A bellhop paused mid-step, his eyes flicking toward the desk. Maya exhaled slowly. Here's what's going to happen, Rena. Rena flinched. You're going to find me a room. Right now. Rena stared blankly. Did I stutter? She scrambled behind the monitor, hands shaking as she typed. Okay. I found one. Which room? 204. Maya didn't blink. Of course. The one near the elevators, across from the maintenance closet. View of the parking lot. Rena froze again. Maya leaned in, her voice cool as silk but sharp as a scalpel. Do I look foolish to you? No. I just thought. You thought I'd take it and leave quietly, like all the other guests you've mistreated. Silence. The staff around them stood still, unsure whether to intervene or stay invisible. Maya picked up the keycard slowly. Thank you, Rena. But she didn't walk away. Not yet. She held the card between her fingers like a blade. You know, people like me, women of color especially, were taught to take the room. Be grateful. Keep quiet. Let it go. She stepped back. But that's not how I built this empire. That's not how I raised this hotel from blueprint to crown jewel. Maya turned toward the elevator, pausing just long enough to glance over her shoulder. This isn't over. And with that, she walked away. Head high, voice steady, every step echoing louder than anything Rena could say. The moment Maya stepped into room 204, she didn't even glance around. She didn't need to. She knew this room by heart. The faint hum from the elevator shaft, the brittle carpet by the closet, the window that framed nothing but heat waves rising from the asphalt. This wasn't just a room. It was a message. You don't belong. Maya placed the keycard on the nightstand like it was contaminated, sat down at the desk, and opened her laptop. She logged in, not through the guest Wi-Fi, but through the encrypted channel reserved for executives. The system greeted her with a quiet chime. And then she was in. First stop, staff incident logs. She searched by location, dozens of entries. Then, filtering by name, Rena S. The screen populated instantly. Guest complaint flagged staff member Rena as dismissive toward non-white guests. Incident filed. Rena denied reservation check-in to Asian American couple citing policy. Internal note. Rena reprimanded for tone with elderly black guest. Guest comment. Felt uncomfortable. Clerk kept asking where I was really from. Maya leaned back, breath caught in her throat. This wasn't a one-off. This wasn't a glitch. This was a pattern. She clicked through reports, each one adding weight to her chest. Some were buried in soft language, HR euphemisms like interpersonal misalignment or tone awareness, but the message was clear. Rena had repeatedly, quietly, made certain people feel small, and no one stopped her. Maya opened another tab. Manager notes. Supervisor, Lucas Park. Dozens of performance entries appeared, all neatly time-stamped. None escalating to meaningful action. There were vague notes. Reminded to adjust tone. Asked to revisit training modules. Verbal coaching issued. All signs of a manager covering tracks instead of confronting truth. One comment stood out. Guest alleged racial profiling by Rena. No follow-up conducted. Incident resolved on site. Maya stared at the line. Her jaw tensed. Resolved on site. Was that how they wrote off pain now? Just a line in a database, no consequence. She closed the screen, eyes burning. Not with tears, but with focus. This was bigger than one slight, one deleted reservation, one bad room. This was how injustice crept in. Quietly, wrapped in fake politeness and soft HR language, insulated by people too timid to act, and Maya had seen enough. She stood up, gathered herself slowly, adjusted her jacket, fixed the collar. Her empire, her legacy, had been weaponized by indifference, but not anymore. Maya didn't storm into the lobby. She glided. Every step from the elevator to the manager's office was measured. She passed Rena without looking at her. That alone made Rena shift uncomfortably in her seat. Maya pushed open the office door without knocking. Inside, Lucas Park, a man with the energy of perpetual avoidance, looked up from his screen and froze. His eyes widened, not in recognition but in fear. "Ms. Tanaka," he blurted, nearly knocking over his coffee. "I didn't know. No one told me." Maya closed the door behind her gently and leaned against it. "Save it," she said. Lucas swallowed. Is there an issue?" Maya folded her arms. "You tell me. Do you know what's happening at your front desk?" Lucas forced a nervous smile. "As far as I'm aware, operations are." Wrong answer. The smile died on his face. Maya stepped forward, voice level but loaded. "Your front desk clerk, Rena, deleted my reservation. Not a system error, not a glitch, manual deletion, and this isn't the first time." Lucas blinked rapidly. "I am so sorry. If I'd known it was you." Maya cut in sharp. "It shouldn't have to be me." Silence. Lucas flushed. "She's done this before." Maya continued, now pacing. "Guests of color, disrespected, dismissed, profiled, complaints swept into corners. Phrases like guest misunderstanding, staff confusion, resolved on site. You've had the data, you've seen the patterns, and you did nothing." Lucas looked like he might faint. "I thought she just needed more training." "Training?" Maya scoffed. "Lucas, this isn't a software tutorial. This is racial bias. And you let it fester behind that desk like mold under polished marble." He stammered. "I didn't mean. You didn't act. That's what matters." She pointed toward the door. "So here's how this goes. You walk out there. You fire her. In public. In front of everyone." Lucas froze. Right now. Right now." He hesitated, but the look in Maya's eyes left no room for negotiation. He nodded slowly, sweat beading at his temples. A moment later, the lobby went still as Lucas emerged from his office. Maya just behind him. All eyes turned, the lounge couple, the bellhop, the other clerks. "Rena," Lucas called, voice shaking. "Can I speak with you?" She looked up, confused. Then slowly it dawned. "No, wait. It's over." Maya said firmly from behind him. "Your actions have consequences. But it was a mistake. I didn't know." Maya took a step closer. "You looked me in the eye, saw my skin, my face, my name, and decided I didn't belong. You decided I was less." The room held its breath. Rena's mouth opened, then closed. She reached for some excuse, some fabricated version of the truth, but none of it would land. Lucas cleared his throat. Rena, you're dismissed. Effective immediately. No, please. This is all being blown out of proportion? Maya asked, tone icy. Tell that to every guest you made feel small. Tell it to the black couple you denied last month. The Indian family you rushed through check-in. The Vietnamese professor you kept waiting for 40 minutes because you claimed the ID looked fake. Gasps rippled from the staff. Rena's cheeks flushed. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you did, Maya replied, then turned to Lucas. And you allowed it. Rena gathered her things in furious silence and stormed out, but not before casting a venomous glance backward. Maya didn't flinch. She let the exit door slam behind her like a full stop. Justice at last. The lobby was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Rena was gone. But the ripple she left behind was unmistakable. Staff exchanged looks. Guests sat upright. Even the bellhop's hands trembled slightly around his cart. Maya stepped forward, heels clicking softly against marble. The only sound in the room. She approached the front desk. The young male clerk, barely 20, glasses slipping down his nose, stood frozen behind the counter. His voice cracked as he asked, "Ma'am, do you work for corporate?" Maya met his eyes, then glanced around the lobby. Every face now watched her, every ear tilted slightly forward. She let the pause hang in the air, then spoke. "I am the reason this hotel exists," gasped. One woman actually covered her mouth. Another clerk dropped his pen. "My name," she continued, her voice measured, "is Maya Tanaka, founder, owner, architect of the entire Lotus hospitality brand." The silence thickened. Lucas looked as if he might crumple to the floor. Maya turned toward the desk, picked up the landline phone, and dialed directly into the executive line. "This is Tanaka," she said coolly, effective immediately. "Shut down the Lotus Inn for a full-scale internal audit. I want every guest complaint from the past 6 months reviewed, every employee performance file reevaluated, every department head questioned." Pause. "And one more thing. Any complaint flagged for racial bias or discriminatory behavior is to be prioritized. Those names go straight to me." She hung up. The young clerk blinked. "You're really her." Maya smiled. "Now you know." She turned to the entire room. For too long, people like Rena were allowed to hide behind systems, behind silence, behind excuses. That ends today. She scanned the faces. Some pale, some wide-eyed, some ashamed. We don't build legacies by pretending injustice doesn't exist. We build them by burning rot out of the foundation. No one dared speak. She straightened her jacket and gestured calmly. "Anyone here who thinks this is just about one fired employee, you're not listening. If you can't treat every guest with the same dignity and respect, this is your warning. You won't last in my house." Then she walked, not rushed, not angry, but deliberate, toward the elevator, toward control, toward reform. And as the doors slid shut, the entire lobby stood still, watching a woman they'd underestimated reshape an empire. The suite Maya entered wasn't just quiet. It was untouched, immaculate bedding, soft lights, windows facing the city skyline. But Maya didn't look at any of it. She closed the door, pulled her laptop from her bag, and sat down at the writing desk. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Corporate, legal, VR, HR, even her board chair. She silenced them all. She didn't need reassurance. She needed action. She logged back into the internal system. First order of business. Rena S. Permanently blacklisted. Not just from this hotel, from the entire brand. Maya didn't believe in revenge, but she believed in memory. Systems forget too easily. Hers wouldn't. Next, Lucas Park. She hovered over his employee file. There were reasons to fire him, 1,000. Cowardice, neglect, complicity. And yet she paused, because in the lobby he had acted. Late, hesitant, imperfect, but he had done what none of his predecessors had dared to do. She amended his file. Manager placed on probation. Final chance to demonstrate accountability. Immediate mentorship required. Direct oversight. M. Tanaka. Then she pulled up the guest complaint logs. Each one read like a wound. Front desk clerk looked at my black son and asked if he was lost. Clerk questioned my Indian surname twice. Said it didn't match the ID. Latina guest denied suite upgrade, while white guest behind her received one without asking. Maya marked every one of them for personal review. These weren't numbers. They were stories. They were echoes of how the world still measured worth, often by skin, not soul. A knock at the door. She opened it slowly. Lucas stood there, face pale, posture deflated. "Ms. Tanaka," he whispered. I had no idea. I swear." She looked at him, not with fury, but clarity. "That's the problem, Lucas," she replied. "You had no idea what was happening in your own house." "I'll fix it," he stammered. "I'll work twice as hard." "No," she said, cutting him off. "You'll listen, you'll unlearn, and you'll earn the right to lead again." Lucas nodded, breath catching in his throat. "Thank you." Maya didn't smile. She simply stepped back and closed the door, firm. Final. She poured herself a drink, sat by the window, watched the city shimmer. Tonight wasn't about reclaiming her place. It was about never surrendering it again. And tomorrow, the Lotus Inn would be different. Because Maya Tanaka had reminded them, and herself, that empires built on respect cannot tolerate silence in the face of injustice. She didn't just run a hotel, she ran a standard. And from now on, everyone would see it.